Welcome to America in Danger tonight. Now, we certainly have a lot going on, and I think we would be remiss if we did not talk about the situation in Afghanistan.
Absolutely. I think that is the issue of the day.
You know, but I want to make a couple points before we dive into that. You know, I said it earlier in the week. There were some polls concerning President Biden's approval numbers. Mm-hmm. And they're down in the low 40s. The last I heard. Now, they might have dropped even more than that.
He's been tanking, yeah.
But they were in the low 40s, and I thought about that. And
Who are these 40?
Well, that's what I want to know, but I couldn't help but think. The problem is not that we have a complete incompetent in the White House.
Right.
The problem is not that he's surrounded himself with complete incompetence.
Right.
The problem is that we still have 44% of Americans who think he's doing a good job.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think about that.
Well, as you might expect, I do.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'm right, but
well, give us your opinion on that. I'd like to hear it.
I think the majority of people are rather superficially engaged at any given time on the political direction of the country. They get the bulk of their news and their political insight from pop culture TV shows and of course the mainstream media and Hollywood, academia we're all captured by the left a long time ago, and so they feed these folks a steady diet of this stuff. Most people couldn't find Afghanistan on a map, don't really have any idea what's going on, and so that doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah, I think you are correct on that.
Yeah.
Well, we have a call.
All right.
Well, let's take that call and see what we got. Thanks for calling America in Danger. You're on the air.
Well.
Hello, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good evening. What's on your mind tonight? Hello? Yeah, I think we're having some technical difficulty here. Leah's going to work on that and give us a call back.
Yeah, hopefully we can get the caller back.
Give us a call back. Please do call back. But, it's interesting that the Democrats, for all the hook and crook things that they did to win this election or steal this election.
Well, at the most benign statement you can make is to exploit a pandemic and manipulate the rules of the election to win.
Yeah,
which they would not have done otherwise.
That's correct. They were hoping for a Democrat upon which they could depend. Instead, they got a complete incompetent, senile individual who wears Depends.
That's right. However, I've been watching the comment sections and a lot of the articles and on, and I'm growing a little weary of everybody saying, "Oh, he's incompetent," and this is, they're just fools and they don't know what they're doing. Yeah, that's not it. No. He may be a bumbling fool. He may be a addle-minded, senile, rapidly declining geriatric, but those around him and those who are orchestrating policy and are setting policy, they are not. Okay, and I think 90% of what's going on is as was planned, as designed. We can go into all that in more detail in terms of how we feel about things, but to me, I have a hard time believing that with the best intelligence apparatus in the world, satellites, the instantaneous communications, it's simply not comprehensible that they couldn't conceive that this would be the outcome when they pulled the military out before they evacuated our civilians from Afghanistan.
I think you're absolutely correct.
Anybody could have predicted this based on just a superficial review of history and similar situations, Saigon and other evacuations where forces have had to evacuate and get their people. Incomprehensible. There's no way that this wasn't foreseen.
It is. It absolutely is. I think it was fully intentional.
Fully intentional.
I think this was to divert attention from domestic issues here,
right?
To facilitate pushing the Green New Deal through,
and to continue ceding power to China.
Yes,
that is absolutely. Really, I think ultimately what is in play here is an effort to cede power to China, to remove the United States as the preeminent world superpower, to diminish it in the eyes of others in the world, to decrease their faith and their confidence and our ability to stick by our promises. Okay. All this was foreseen.
Yeah.
Joe Biden actually is the perfect vehicle for delivering this kind of a policy, because it does appear on the surface that he's just incompetent and not very capable.
This is true.
Okay, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think that's the case with him. I don't think that's the case with the policy.
Exactly. It is not the case with the policy. I fully believe that this is done strategically and on purpose. These people are not, I heard Kudlow say a couple weeks ago, he said, well, I know a lot of these people and they mean well.
Lawrence Kudlow?
They don't.
Right.
Yeah, Lawrence Kudlow.
Who was within the Trump administration. But he's one of these kind of inside the beltway. I mean, frankly, he's borderline swamp creature.
Yeah, absolutely. And he thinks that they're well-meaning individuals and they just make mistakes.
Right.
I think that's absolutely wrong, and I think he's lying because he's bound to know better.
Well, because ultimately all of these people, every last one of them, which is why I always express so much contempt for politicians, just generically, every last one of them has their own personal fortunes tied to all this stuff.
Exactly.
And, I've said it on the show before, but, the founders were smart, and they were keen students of human nature and history. You think they didn't have Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi types back in the founding days? Well, they most certainly did. They've had them throughout human history. The founders created a system that chained them down, that minimized their impact on the lives of the citizens of the country they were creating. Okay, and I mean, just think of Chuck Schumer in a barrister wig, and I promise you that there were plenty of the exact same kinds of personalities running around in those days.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
And so it's not that there's some good politicians and there's some bad politicians. No, there's some bad politicians and there's some worse politicians.
Exactly.
Okay, and to the extent that they have influence on your life, it's probably a bad thing. That's it.
I have to agree with that 100%.
Right. So all this stuff is going on with Afghanistan. I'm sorry. I mean, first of all, we shouldn't have been there for 20 years. That right in itself is all part of this sort of inside the, this sort of liberal Eastern establishment nation building exercise. Okay, we should have gone in after the 9/11 thing, taken out the Taliban, bombed them back into the Stone Age. Probably wouldn't have taken too much in the way of munitions, frankly. Wouldn't take much. And really killed the Taliban, cut the head off that snake, and then left. I mean, they don't call Afghanistan the graveyard of empires for no reason. In fact, I was reviewing the timeline of their history in this book here. I mean, there were 3 wars with Britain throughout their period as an empire. Okay, and then of course we all remember, anybody of a certain age remembers the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan in 1979. The United States boycotted the Olympics because of that. Okay, and then and they ran them out on a rail. Okay, ultimately, in fact, a really good movie, a very good, entertaining movie that provides some perspective on Afghanistan is a movie called Charlie Wilson's War. And it chronicles how a Texas Democrat congressman, this is back in the days when Democrats were often still anti-communist, and the lines were drawn differently. I mean, in the South especially, a lot of Democrats, people need to remember Jesse Helms ran as a Democrat for his first term as a senator, so if that gets you calibrated for that period in history. But it covers how the United States was able to covertly fund the Mujahideen in Afghanistan and help run the Soviets out of that country. Now, the movie's good, it's entertaining, it has all the liberal tropes that one expects, because ultimately the message of the movie is that, well, after we took out the Soviets, we didn't do anything to help rebuild the country, and that's why the terrorists took hold, and Osama bin Laden, and yada yada. Whatever. I mean, that's really beside the point. The point is we spent 20 years, well over $1 trillion.
Yep.
We've left in disgrace, $88 billion worth of equipment, okay, operating by the dictates of the Taliban according to their timeline to leave. The whole thing is a complete, repudiation of American foreign policy and a complete humiliation on the world stage, and it's been done on purpose. This has been engineered, again, like so many things. FDR famously said, if it happens in politics, you can bet it was planned that way.
Exactly.
And that is kind of my model for understanding these current events.
Absolutely correct. Now another interesting aspect of Afghanistan, which plays into this whole theory of this was planned. Afghanistan sits on over $1 trillion of strategic minerals.
I've heard 3.
Lithium, yeah, the Afghanis estimate 3.
Right.
The U.S. Geologic Survey estimates about $1 trillion.
Okay.
But that's in very superficial geologic assays.
Mm-hmm.
That's flyover assays.
Right.
That's not taking core samples and what have you. So
Right.
the Afghanis are probably more correct. It's probably
Okay.
closer to 3.
Right.
But they've got lanthanum, cerium, neodymium, aluminum, gold, zinc, silver, mercury, lithium.
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 And what do we use lithium for?
That would be car batteries.
And who wants to be the preeminent car battery manufacturer in the world?
Ding, ding, ding.
Right.
That would be China.
Right. What is People's Republic
China?
of China?
Exactly.
I'll take geopolitical suicide for the United States for 400.
There you
Who
go.
is China?
Who is China?
That's right.
That's exactly right. We got a call. We're going. Hopefully, this is our caller that we lost before. Thanks for calling America in Danger. You're on the air.
All right, I'm glad you're back on, because we need.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate
Thank you very
it.
much. Where are you calling from, by the way?
I used to live in North Carolina, but I live in Texas now.
All right.
Wow. All right.
Wonderful. So, a little different down that way?
It's different from North Carolina. We got a different set of idiots down there.
Right.
Oh Lord. Excuse me.
Are you near any of the border towns?
No, I'm not. I live in Northeast Texas, and but what I see bothers me a little bit in the fact that you have so many people that want to migrate not only from South America and Mexico, but from California. Mm-hmm. And what they want to do is they tell you how bad it is there with taxes and everything, but they want it just like home.
That's exactly right, sir.
Yeah.
And that's a common theme I hear among like-minded people is that, boy, we're happy to welcome. That's happening in this state too. We're happy to welcome people from other places, but don't bring your stupid voting patterns with you.
Exactly.
If you're leaving New Jersey or New York because the taxes are high and the property values are expensive and everything's a headache, think about why it's that way. Because geographically, there's nothing wrong with those places. They've got lots of resources, water, ports, all the things that make places nice and made those historically great places. Politicians screwed them up, and politicians get to power because people vote for them. And so the people the people that have been voting a certain way, and they come to these states, I agree with you, sir. I think they're as bad or worse than these imported Democrats from Central and South America.
Absolutely, and that goes for immigrants, especially the Afghanis they're bringing over here, the people from South America. You know what? If you're going to come to the U.S., come to be an American. Don't come to bring the cesspool nation that you left behind.
Right.
Come to be an American.
Especially the politics. I don't care what they believe as long as they don't impose them on me.
Well, I care what they believe to the extent that they believe in the Constitution, they believe in liberty, and they don't believe in the authoritarianism that they are escaping, and that they don't come here expecting for taxpayers to fund their existence. I mean, that's always been
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's always been the
that.
promise of this country, is that people can make their own way and support themselves and enjoy the fruits of their labor.
Yep.
Right. And one of the things that happens in Texas that bothers me is they're driving prices sky high because they sell their properties in California, if they can, for enormous amounts of money, and then they come here and buy property at 10-20% above asking price.
Yes, sir. I know all about that. Yep, that's a very common thing. It's happening, especially in the Raleigh-Durham real estate market, is that these house-rich folks, they sell their houses for cash in places like New York and Portland and San Francisco and California in general, and they come here and these prices seem good and they're paying over asking, they're paying cash, high due diligence, all the things that make it impossible for local folks to compete for the houses. And so they're really displacing folks who lived in the state most of their lives and making it very difficult for them to buy houses.
Yeah. All right. Well, caller, we appreciate your call, and you have a good evening. Thanks for calling.
All right. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Good. No, obviously the signal's coming out.
Reaching out to Texas.
Is this another call?
We got another call here.
All right.
We're going to take another call here. All right, caller, you're on the air. Thanks for calling America in Danger.
Well, thank you. Thank you for answering. The bigger issue, because a lot of people are very upset over the Afghan pullout, and they should be.
Yep.
It's a bigger issue. By the way, this is Lloyd Bailey down here in Gainesville, Florida.
Well, how are you, Lloyd?
Bigger issue. Hey, how y'all doing?
Good,
Well, thank
good.
You know, Senator Hiram Johnson said the first casualty of war is truth.
Yep.
And the bigger issue is the legitimacy of all of these deployments. The government has been misusing our military. The last legal war was World War II. That was the last declaration of war.
Yep.
But our government doesn't care about our troops. And I come from a military family on one side. I hate to see it. But we need to bring all of our troops home from all 130 countries where they are currently stationed, secure our border, and get out of the United Nations.
100% agree with all of those statements.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It goes to the root of the problem. And, you know, I think this is a great opportunity for people to be reminded that these are UN deployments.
That's
and
right.
Nowhere in my recollection or in the Constitution does it state that we are to be the world's police force.
That's correct.
Agreed. Fully agreed.
With that stated, I'm just curious, what do you think our posture ought to be with respect to Taiwan going forward?
You know, we created the situation in China.
Yep.
The State Department has caused more human suffering than any government in the history of the world by enabling the Bolshevik Revolution, betraying General Chiang Kai-shek,
Absolutely.
and giving aid to Mao Zedong.
Yep.
At this point, you know, we are in such a vulnerable situation. I think we need to mind our own business because 80% of our weapons are imported, and I don't think we could beat China in war. So I'm not an advocate pointing sharp sticks at snakes. It's unfortunate. Communism cannot support without outside aid. So the best thing we can do is stop giving aid to communists like Clinton and Nixon and Reagan did, and we've been doing for, you know, decades, because they will collapse under their own weight.
I agree with that. You know, my concern is that we'll extricate ourselves from these places and we'll diminish our military stature, but we'll continue to use our market power and our prosperity to fund continued communist encroachment on the world.
Yeah.
You know, our nation, I tell people all the time, and it's serious, we are third world status. And you consider that we don't produce anything.
That's right.
We have honest elections.
Right.
Our borders aren't secure.
That's correct.
If we don't fix America first, all these other world events aren't going to matter.
I agree, and of course, the other characteristic that likens us to a third world status is hyperinflation and banana republic currency practices and banking practices. So we're definitely rapidly accelerating there too.
Exactly, and I forgot that one. We do not have an honest currency.
Right.
Correct.
So it's a disaster. It's been planned. None of these things, and your listeners hopefully all understand. This is all designed.
That's correct. That's right.
Our interference with the Muslim nations. I hate to say it, but they have stronger family values than we do.
That's true. That's right.
Their marriages stay together. You know, for every stoning, because that's what you hear, they're being stoning their women. Well, I think they're probably more domestic murders, and we know our divorce rate is outrageous, and we're murdering millions of babies. So, you know, we're no one to say how they should live. They are resistant to the New World Order and globalism, and I don't blame them. I don't, you know, agree with their religion, but our media, just like they said in World War I, the German Huns were bashing in babies' heads. This is all designed, and the American people suck it up like a sponge.
They always do.
Right.
They always do. Well, let me ask you this: at the risk of going down a sort of a negative note, I mean, do you think it's irreversible? Do you think we can reclaim the republic?
Absolutely. In the John Birch Society, education is our total strategy, and the truth is our only weapon. All it will take, the states And here's another thing. The states don't have to do what federal judges say. You know, one of my
That's correct.
presidents was Andrew Jackson. He told the Supreme Court, that's your opinion and I have mine. Now enforce it with your army. They are the weakest branch. We don't have 3 co-equal branches. They have no power over the purse or the sword.
Mm-hmm.
We need states. We need to reclaim our states. And our state legislatures and governors need to tell the federal government it's not constitutional. 9th and 10th Amendments support it, and we also have Madison and Jefferson and the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions of 1798. We just need to reclaim our states, put tariffs. Tariffs are one of the only legitimate ways to tax, and, you know, building back our country. But it's not going to be easy, but things weren't easy in 1776 either, and
Right.
That's right.
not free.
Well, this country's had lots of periods of time where things have been difficult. We had a civil war. We had to put up with the Wilson administration,
Oh, yeah.
which changed a lot of things. We've amended the Constitution several times, much to you know, the detriment of the Republic and the founding ideals. So yeah, no, well, good. I'm glad you feel that way. I try to feel that way. I try to be bullish. I try not to be so bullish on doom. You know.
Yeah, you know, look, in birching, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. But I think it was John Quincy Adams says, duty is ours, and results are God's. So we need to pray like it's up to us, or pray like it's up to God, and work like it's up to us.
Yeah.
And I do feel there is an awakening. This last stolen election, I think, has gotten a lot of people's attention.
I hope so.
I think it
hope
has.
so, because while Donald Trump certainly wasn't the ideal vehicle for the kinds of things we're talking about, I think his one single virtue and characteristic was that he really, I don't believe, was an embedded part of this globalist establishment, and they hate that. He did push back against China, however nominally, and he pushed back a little bit on this direction that these people have been taking this country, and for that he could not be forgiven. And I don't think he was. I don't think he was really able to. I don't think they were able to control him the way they clearly have control of all these other people.
The defining difference with Trump, and I'm convinced he loves this country.
Right, that's exactly right. He doesn't hate the founding principles of this country the way the others do.
He's the only president in our lifetime that has not either been a member or affiliated with the Council on Foreign Relations.
That's right.
And for anyone listening, if you're not familiar with the Council on Foreign Relations, you're never really going to understand what's happening to our country. And so Trump, that's why they hated him.
Totally agree with that.
Virtual outsider, absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, well, Lloyd, we certainly appreciate your call tonight, and we're gonna take a little commercial break with a positive note that we can win this thing back. So, thanks for calling.
God save our republic.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a good evening. And with that, we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we are going to wrap up Afghanistan and talk about COVID just a little bit.
All right.
So stay tuned for more America in Danger.
Hey y'all, Russ Varnell here from the Russ Varnell Show right here on WHIG-TV. I want to invite you and you, hey, and you too, to come see myself and the whole Two Country Band Saturday, September the 11th at the Nashville Arts Center in Nash County, right there in Nashville on the main drive. Everybody knows about the Nashville Arts Center. What a great place to go see shows and hear music. The old church right there on the main drive close to the courthouse in Nashville. Come see myself and the whole Two Country Band Saturday, September the 11th at 7 p.m. You can bring your grandma, your granddaddy, your grandchildren, your young'uns, your sons and daughters, and just bring yourself. Saturday, September the 11th at 7 p.m. Going to be a big time. Myself and the whole Two Country Band will be looking for you. Y'all come, okay?
Hey, this is John Woodruff with Premier Equipment Company of Rocky Mountain Infield. Been shopping for a zero-turn mower lately. You've probably noticed that inventory is getting hard to come by, so come on down and see what we've got. We've got a showroom full. We have a showroom full of Exmark and Grasshopper zero-turn mowers, everything from commercial to residential, everything in between. We've got a good relationship with our distributors. They tell us when we sell these, they've got more on the way. If you've been in the market for a zero-turn mower, come see me, John Woodruff from Premier Equipment.
Premier Equipment is open during the week from 8 to 5:30 and on the weekends from 8 to 12.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, attorney at law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
All right, we are back. It is August 14th, 2021. You're watching America in Danger, and we've been talking about Afghanistan and some other topics, but I want to get back to Afghanistan for just a minute. We're not going to take this whole segment for Afghanistan, but I do want to address a couple things about Afghanistan. First of all, the Chinese, while we were there, already had a contract with the Afghani government to mine some of the strategic minerals.
Okay.
Now, of course, that government has collapsed.
Right.
The Taliban have taken over, but the Chinese have already said that they're just going to roll over and deal with the Taliban. They don't care who's there. They want the minerals. That's all.
They'll be happy to set up whatever they need to set up with.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're talking about frankly, the Chinese regime is just as vicious and authoritarian and violent as the Taliban. They're just more sophisticated about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the poor Uyghurs who are pushed out to that region to start with are scared to death that the Chinese are going to sell them into slavery in Afghanistan to work for the Taliban to bring these minerals out.
It's a reasonable fear.
Absolutely, with them loading people up in cattle cars and shipping them out like the Nazis did.
Right.
You know, it just really blows my mind. You know, the Afghanis, keep this in mind, the Taliban, the ISIS-K, whatever offshoot they're talking about, you know, whatever
the K variant of ISIS.
Yeah, the K variant, yeah, whatever the flavor of the day is, right, with the radical, primitive, brutal Islamic jihadist, whatever that is, they're all brutal.
Absolutely. They all have a 7th century mentality, a medieval approach to justice. Absolutely.
Absolutely. They do not think like Westerners think.
Right.
That would be us, Westerners.
Right.
You know.
And that's fine for them.
That's exactly right. If they want to be that way, that's fine.
I mean,
but the people here think, oh, we can all just get along. We can all cohabitate.
Yeah, and I tell you, the other aspect of this whole thing that I hope people are paying attention to is that this whole thing, you know, the left is very good at turning lemons into lemonade. They're going to use this whole quote-unquote debacle, because we've already stated we don't think it really is a debacle proper, but this whole event is going to be used to usher in, there are elements in the government asking for 200,000-300,000 Afghan refugees to be settled into this country.
Absolutely are.
Which that is their objective. They haven't been able to make the people in this country vote for the communism that they're trying to impose on us. So they want to just basically re-engineer the demographics.
Absolutely.
And they are salivating the prospect of bringing in a couple 100,000 of these Afghans. And anybody that's looked at what's happened to Europe in the past 10 years with their Afghan refugee and their migration, I'm sorry. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm channeling Donald Trump here, but most of them are criminals and violent perpetrators of crime in those countries. You know.
Well, just their religious beliefs.
Yeah.
Are such that it's criminal. Many of their beliefs are criminal under our society.
That's right.
They fully believe that a Christian woman is fair game to rape or abuse or any of those things. And we're not making this up.
Yeah.
If you think Islam is a peaceful, friendly religion that can coexist with Christianity, you're wrong.
Right.
You need to study it.
Well, I'll say this. I do not believe that any group of truly devout Muslims would have ever created the Constitution of the United States.
No. First of all, Islam is not simply a religion. Islam is a theocracy.
Right.
Now let's define what a theocracy is.
Right.
It is a form of governance.
Right. It is a religious government.
Exactly. It is not simply a religion. You know, here we have Christians, Baptists, Mormons. We have every religion under the sun, every flavor under the sun, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Our Constitution
But it's not part of our. It's not part
every
of
one
our,
of those.
of our state structure.
Exactly.
Of our governmental
We
structure.
don't have priests and ministers telling us the law.
Right.
Under Islam, that is the law.
That's right.
The mullahs, the ayatollahs, the priests, whatever they want to call them, they are the law and they dictate. You
Now-
have no rights as an individual. You are owned by Islam and the people that make the rules.
Yeah, it's not something that we should be actively, you know. And again, I support every aspect of the Constitution, including the First Amendment. So I believe in freedom of religion.
As do
but
I.
I don't see any reason to actively import, okay, a fundamentally antithetical religion to our history and traditions. In the form of Muslims.
Absolutely.
From these various countries. I mean, look at what has happened in Minnesota.
Yeah.
You got Ilhan Omar representing that Somali district down there. I mean, it's just, or over there. I mean, it just really is.
The police won't even go there.
It's incomprehensible why we would do that, because there are things that define cultures, and this culture has its own unique characteristics, and they're fundamentally Western, oriented towards liberty and freedom. We have a constitution that reflects that and defines that, frankly. And there are many, many elements in the society that are trying to destroy that by design. And one of the ways they're doing that is to bring in all these alien elements that will not assimilate and will not absorb into the greater culture. By design. They don't want them to.
Right.
Yeah.
That is the key. You know, I have no issue with people coming over here. I have no issue with people practicing Islam
That's right.
within the laws and the Constitution
That's correct.
of this nation.
That's correct.
And the problem is, they don't.
Right.
Look at Paris. There are no-go zones in Paris.
Well, in
Police
UK
do not go, and they recommend tourists do not go there.
And in UK as well. Europe in general is experiencing that.
Well, you know, Dearborn, Michigan, same thing. There are zones where the police will not go.
Well, what you have is an unholy alliance between the Chamber of Commerce types who want cheap labor and that aspect, and the leftists who want new voters. Okay, and so the consequence, good old American citizens are left out of that equation.
That is correct. Excuse me. Swallowed a little bit.
Well, I understand.
All right. Well, let's leave Afghanistan. Let's talk about COVID just a little bit, if I can get my voice here. I don't have COVID, by the way.
Right.
I've got
just water down the wrong pipe.
Down the wrong pipe, exactly. All right, now, you know, we've talked about COVID on this show numerous times. Now, let me just say this. Do I believe COVID is out there? Absolutely.
It's a real thing. I mean,
do I believe people die from it? Absolutely.
Sure.
Do I believe it came out of the Wuhan lab?
Absolutely. I sure do believe that as well.
Absolutely. In fact, I ran across this article right here. This is out of Canada. It says, samples from early Wuhan COVID patients had genetically modified Henipah virus, one of the two types of viruses sent to China by a Canadian lab. So what they're saying is that the signature of the early COVID virus contained these two viruses that came from Canada.
Right, they were literally shipped to the Wuhan lab for study.
They absolutely were. So we know what that indicates. That there were experiments going on with gain-of-function research. We know that from Anthony Fauci's
We've seen the hearings.
emails from the hearings. There's no doubt about that. There was gain-of-function research going on. The Chinese military wanted to develop a biological weapon.
Right.
Now, do I think they released it? No. I think they leaked it accidentally, and once they did,
they decided, hey, we're not going to be the only ones who suffer as a result of this accident. Otherwise, we'll be talking about being put back in the 7th century. We
got to spread it around the world.
And the only piece of evidence I needed to convince me that that's what they did, and they did it on purpose, is they banned all domestic flights out of Wuhan in China, but they permitted international flights. Now that, to me, if I were on a jury, that would be the single piece of evidence that's all it would take for me to convict.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I fully believe that.
Yeah.
And, you can listen to CNN all you want, and Yahoo and Google, and, all of these big tech agencies who've censored.
We've
And
basically been co-opted by China. They're
Co-opted by
basically
China.
part of that whole effort to
Absolutely,
make
yeah.
them the preeminent world superpower.
But use a little common sense. Rely on the Occam's razor principle. Eliminate all of the hysterical talking heads from CNN and all of those shows, and think about it just for a minute. We have been lied to by our government. And speaking of lies, I've got a list of the top 5 lies on COVID. Now, you can research these if you want, because this is all well-researched information here from the New American Magazine, and the New American Magazine is one of the most thoroughly researched and vetted magazines in the U.S.
I do know they've never been successfully sued.
Never been sued. They broke information on the Oklahoma City bombing that our own ATF and FBI completely ignored.
Continue to this day to ignore.
They broke information on Clinton, on just
myriad subjects throughout the years.
Absolutely, I can't even name all of them. The first lie is that the face masks stop the spread. Well, they don't.
Right.
It's a lie that they do. And Australia in 2003, do you know that they were fining drugstores and manufacturers for saying that the mask helped prevent the spread of virus?
Well, I didn't know that.
Yes, they were actually fining retailers who touted the benefits of wearing a mask.
For preventing the spread of what was the virus at the time?
It was SARS back then.
Right.
SARS.
Right.
But they were actually fining them up to $110,000.
Interesting.
So that was Australia, who has gone completely bonkers.
They have. They've gone
point.
completely unhinged.
Unhinged.
And as a parenthetical note on that, I might remind folks that Australians gave up their firearms to the government in 1996. Tangentially, I just want to point out, we have a lot of Western countries that sort of, at first blush, seem to mimic, the United States in terms of liberties and freedoms, but at the end of the day, they don't have that constitution like we have. Australia had very liberal gun laws until they decided they weren't going to have those anymore, and boom, that's all there was to that.
Yep.
Okay, and now citizens in Australia are deprived of that basic fundamental God-given right.
They are, and you've got a bunch of scared, woke leftists running the country now, doing anything they want to do.
With an authoritarian police state literally arresting teenagers for not wearing masks. They're beating people. I mean, it's rather shocking. I've always had a sort of sort of romantic sort of, feeling about Australia. I've always just kind of liked it and thought it was a place that I could relate to and might enjoy spending time in, and it's turning out they've really gone unhinged. But anyway, I'm digressing there a little bit.
I always looked at it as a rugged, robust nation. But apparently it's the leaders over there, not necessarily the people, but the leaders they've all turned into a bunch of pansies.
Well, sometimes the leaders reflect the population, though, to a certain extent.
Because that's who votes for them.
That's who votes for them.
That's who votes for them.
Yeah.
To continue on about the mask, the University of Sydney infectious disease specialist Yvonne Cossett says that a mask is maybe effective for about 15 minutes until it's saturated with moisture, and then it's zero effective. Now, that's discounting all of the leakage, all of the air coming out from around the mask, and plus, these are not N95 masks.
Right.
These are just slapped on surgical masks. They do not work. Even Anthony Fauci admitted they do not work in early emails.
Everybody who wants to be taken seriously when pressed has to acknowledge those masks are ineffective. The pore size is gigantic compared to the size of a virus particle. I mean, we're talking about orders of magnitude, factors of 10, 100, 1,000, larger than the size of those particles. The analogy would be trying to use hurricane fencing to keep the mosquitoes out.
Absolutely.
Simply no effect. But the reason we know they're not working is we have enough empirical evidence from people wearing these masks with no impact on the spread. You'd be able to see that graphically. You'd be able to plot those data and see that effect, and that's nowhere to be seen.
That's right.
I mean, the mask thing is pure theater.
In fact, a Danish study published last year in the Annals of Internal Medicine found no statistical difference in SARS-CoV-2, that's COVID, by the way.
Right.
SARS-CoV-2 infection rates between masked versus unmasked groups.
Right. And if you go further and find out what are the deleterious effects of wearing one of these masks for an extended period of time.
They're numerous.
Right. You're limiting oxygen intake. You're building up germs. I mean, we're supposed to exhale and get rid of these, basically the waste products of our transpiration process.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really just, I don't know. It's very frustrating.
It is, and these pundits are fond of citing the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic. Oh, well, they wore masks back then and they worked. Well, guess what? San Francisco was the most draconian city back then. They forced masks, they beat people, they even shot people for not wearing masks. They had mask mandates everywhere. And guess what? San Francisco was no different than the cities that did nothing.
Right, and that was at a time when there was much less mobility. I mean, a city would be a good, a rather decent petri dish, to study the effects of virus transmission in a large population. And so, I would believe those studies were probably very good reflection of whether or not the mask had any impact in those days or not.
Absolutely. In fact, the government did an Operation Sea Spray that you might be familiar with in San Francisco. San Francisco, by the way, where they sprayed biological agents in the streets to see how quickly it transmitted from person.
Presumably they were benign, but they could pick them up in some kind of a measurement or marker, and
there were people that died and suffered from it. There were some pathogens there that did cause disease. Now, it wasn't like anthrax or anything, but it was something that they could track, and they would know people contracted.
One more thing to enhance my trust in the governing authorities.
Absolutely. Now, number 2 lie is lockdowns work. Well, they haven't worked.
Well, I just have one word for that to refute that. Sweden.
Yeah, exactly. Sweden and Taiwan both.
Right, Taiwan, that's right.
Relatively lax.
Taiwan got no credit at all for their early response. They mitigated it and really derailed any rapid onset, and yet they didn't do any of these things.
No, didn't do any of it. Sweden and Taiwan both were relatively lax, and their numbers were actually better than most places.
Well, Sweden, just to be clear, they never locked down, they never imposed mask mandates, and they never required businesses to do it. They didn't really require anything. All they did was isolate the most vulnerable population, members of the population, the elderly and those with the comorbidities, and give people fair warning about what was going on, and say, just be careful, use your head, and go about your lives.
Unlike New York and Michigan, where they actually put COVID patients in with the most vulnerable population.
Yeah, well, I understand. Here with the demise of Andrew Cuomo, I understand that they've added another 10 or 15,000 to the number, another 12,000 to the deaths that they attribute to his policy of putting COVID positive patients in nursing homes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable. And some of the more stringent lockdown nations had almost twice the death rates of Sweden and Taiwan.
Well, UK right now is experiencing a huge ramp up. And
you mentioned that headline today that 80%.
I think, let me get this right.
They're 80% vaccinated.
Their death rate is up tenfold from a year ago, despite the fact that the population is not 80% vaccinated. So that tells you a couple of things. One, it tells you the vaccine probably doesn't really work, or it's got a short-lived effectiveness.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I'm generally very dispassionate and objective about these things, and I realize people can easily get ginned up by anecdotal stories and the numbers and so forth. But I can't untake the vaccine.
Right.
I mean, and so I just have decided I just want to sit tight for a while and just see what happens. I think my personal metrics are such that even if I got COVID, I'd probably be very unhappy because I've had a couple flus before, and if I had any kind of a severe response to it, I'm sure I'd be I don't think I would die.
Yeah.
I just don't think I would.
Well, there's a good chance that you would not, given the statistical analysis.
That's right. There's a 98% chance that I wouldn't, based on the statistical analysis.
But you're not bad odds. Actually, those odds are probably better than getting out on the highway.
That's correct. And moreover, the vaccine is probably similar. I mean, a lot of people taking that vaccine and having.
Sure.
But you know what? I've lived long enough to know that I'm always hearing about lawsuits, people who are exposed to this have this claim because there's been this great incidence of this and that.
Every night on TV you see that.
Right,
If you
with the
were
ambulance chasing.
exposed, or you were
Exactly.
this, or you were that, or you were given this drug, yeah.
They just, the authorities haven't done anything to give me confidence. I mean, there are the shenanigans surrounding the election, the highly politicized nature of the rollout of this vaccine, the fact that the prominent leading Democrats were saying they wouldn't take the vaccine as long as Donald Trump had any association with it.
Yeah,
and
somehow,
suddenly that whole thing has been flipped on us. I wasn't interested in taking the vaccine no matter who
I know what you mean.
was presiding over its creation, just because look, I'm a late adopter on most things. I like to wait and see how things shake out.
See how things work out, that's right.
And the other point I want to make before it leaves my rapidly failing brain these days, if the leaders, if our political leaders really believe this mask nonsense, do you really think 80-year-old Nancy Pelosi, who is in an extremely vulnerable demographic, will be at parties and getting her hair done and doing all these things without the mask? If I thought there was anything even remotely that dangerous out there, I'd be probably staying in the house.
Absolutely.
I don't think there is. That's what it boils down to. I simply don't believe it's true.
And on top of that, she wears a cloth mask.
Right. A designer cloth mask to match her shoes and
which have been proven to be completely ineffective, less effective than the surgical mask.
Even the pro-mask crowd says, yeah, well, the cloth masks really don't.
They're useless.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's just.
Oh, but we got 3 layers in there. Oh, yeah.
All right.
Anyway, we got to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up the COVID lies. So stay tuned for America in Danger. We'll be right back.
Hey y'all, Russ Varnell here from the Russ Varnell Show right here on WHIG-TV. I want to invite you and you, hey, and you too, to come see myself and the whole Two Country Band Saturday, September the 11th at the Nashville Arts Center in Nash County, right there in Nashville on the main drive. Everybody knows about the Nashville Arts Center. What a great place to go see shows and hear music. The old church right there on the main drive close to the courthouse in Nashville. Come see myself and the whole Two Country Band Saturday, September the 11th at 7 p.m. You can bring your grandma, your granddaddy, your grandchildren, your young'uns, your sons and daughters, and just bring yourself. Saturday, September the 11th at 7 p.m. Going to be a big time. Myself and the whole Two Country Band will be looking for you. Y'all come, okay?
Hey, this is John Woodruff with Premier Equipment Company of Rocky Mountain Infield. Been shopping for a zero-turn mower lately. You've probably noticed that inventory is getting hard to come by. So come on down and see what we've got. We've got a showroom full. We have a showroom full of Exmark and Grasshopper zero-turn mowers. Everything from commercial to residential, everything in between. We've got a good relationship with our distributors. They tell us when we sell these, they've got more on the way. If you've been in the market for a zero-turn mower, come see me, John Woodruff from Premier Equipment.
Premier Equipment is open during the week from 8 to 5:30 and on the weekends from 8 to 12.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
All right, we are back, and we've been talking about the top 5 COVID lies.
Okay, I think we only got through number 2.
I think so. You know, these lies are so convoluted and complicated and just
trigger lots of tangential discussions.
Absolutely. Well, you know, we were talking about Sweden and Taiwan not locking down, and their numbers were better than many of the severe lockdown places. So, you know, the lockdowns did not work.
Right.
So it's a lie when they tell you that they did.
That's right. That's just a flat out lie.
And first of all, it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. and then it went to complete and total lockdown. Businesses have failed. People have lost everything.
That's right.
Landlords now can't even collect their rent.
Right, and we've acceded to rules and regulations and authoritarian diktats that we never would have in the past.
Exactly. Now, the number 3 lie that's been told was that there are no alternative treatments. It can only be the vaccine, no other alternative treatments. Well, Donald Trump was absolutely flailed for saying that there are alternative treatments out there that work, and so was every other doctor out there who made that claim. Well, guess what? Twitter, Facebook, Google, Yahoo, and the other big tech oligarchs were all wrong. There are numerous other alternative treatment regimes that do work. In fact, there's a group of international lawyers who have formed the Corona Investigative Committee, and they plan massive lawsuits for those who blocked early treatments in favor of the FDA vaccine, because there are claims that 85% of the early deaths could have been prevented.
Mitigated with these palliative treatments, I guess. I guess we're talking about hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin,
Ivermectin, yeah, and there were several others that they used.
I mean, for those who don't recognize ivermectin, that's heartworm medicine for dogs.
Yeah,
it's very commonly available. It's been out there. It's probably off patent even. I don't know, but it's definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you could run down to the animal supply
and get some.
Yeah. But that would be off-label. And see, there's a whole theory out there that all of those were poo-pooed
because there's no money to be made.
No money to be made, and to force promotion of the vaccine as being the only viable route, so that all this money could be diverted to these pharmaceutical companies.
I'm cynical enough that I can buy into that.
I can absolutely buy that.
Yep.
I really do. But what gets me is there's an international group of lawyers preparing lawsuits.
Good.
There are going to be a lot of companies and individuals named in this, and I hope they name every one of the big tech oligarchs.
I do too.
Personally.
And the networks and
the networks
and their heads.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone that contributed to that.
Because that was suppression of information that could have been helpful, and really, under any other set of circumstances, would not have been controversial.
Right.
It's amazing how, when they say trust the science, I can't trust the science when I don't trust the scientists.
Right.
Okay. That's the problem. They're human beings, and they're just as prone to greed and avarice and personal aggrandizement and all the things that make human beings flawed creatures on this planet. And that is why I have a hard time trusting the science. Look, my physician recently, I went for my physical, and he was giving me some grief about not taking the vaccine.
Yeah.
And at one point he made the statement, the numbers are the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. That can mean anything.
Well, that's right.
Who was it that said there's lies, damn lies, and statistics?
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm a numbers guy. I believe in numbers. I believe in mathematics. But I also believe in the phrase garbage in, garbage out.
That's right. And the numbers are based on reported numbers. They're based on reports.
Right. What are the assumptions? Right. What's the source of the data?
Absolutely. And we know that every county and city that went back and reviewed all of the COVID deaths, they find that at least 20% were over-reported.
Absolutely.
At least over 20%. Now the other big lie, and this is a big lie. The entire media lied. The entire media lied to us repeatedly. CBS continually used footage from an Italian hospital to run the hype that hospitals were overloaded.
I remember that.
Couldn't cope with all of the load. Now, certainly hospitals get busy, and certainly emergency rooms get busy.
Right.
How many beds are in a typical emergency room?
Probably not many. I mean, they're designed for emergencies. That's right.
So when you have a massive traffic accident or a building explodes or something of this nature, yes, the emergency rooms are overwhelmed. And overwhelmed is one more than they have capacity for. That is overwhelmed. Now, I'm not saying, and doctors and nurses don't get all in a wad here. I'm not saying that people didn't have to work overtime and have stressful situations.
That's your job.
But the reality is, I sat in an emergency room yesterday for 4 hours. 4 hours to get my ear stitched up. There were plenty. It wasn't overcrowded.
Right.
It's just the bureaucracy of getting through the medical procedure.
That's right.
They have so many papers. I came out of there with a stack of papers more than I bring to this show.
Right. Right.
So many papers, every paper. It's ridiculous.
Well, that's the nature of everything.
It is. It's just so bureaucratic and so records oriented. So, the number 4 lies is, the media lied.
Right.
They did not tell the truth. The media did not tell the truth. Now, the 5th lie, and this is probably the most important lie of all. This is a lie that everyone needs to listen to and really needs to let that sink in. The lie is that the bureaucrats care.
Right. Well, that's sort of a timeless lie.
That's a timeless lie. That's an eternal lie.
That's a interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary lie. I mean, they don't care about anything except their own power, the perpetuation of their own office. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We see Charles Schumer and some of the other ones up there crying crocodile tears. I love them. I
Adam Kinzinger and
these Capitol policemen up there crying. It's just real easy to cry.
That's right.
That's a real easy one there.
You get the lower lip quivering a little bit.
So the bureaucrats don't care.
That's right.
I don't care who they are. They don't care. Why should they?
That's right.
They have nothing at stake.
Right.
Their profit doesn't matter. Their salary doesn't matter.
That's right.
Their lives go on regardless.
That's
so
right.
They don't care.
Right.
Bureaucrats, politicians don't care, and the ones that do scare me.
Right. Well, they don't have to be productive. Well, who was it that said he'd rather the nation be ruled by 10 mendacious individuals than 1,000 philanthropists, because
Absolutely.
Really it's nothing worse than a do-gooder with power.
Yeah,
and authority.
That's exactly right. Because the bad ones would eventually be satisfied for a period of time and not do anything. So we got time for one call.
We
got about 30 seconds. Caller, go ahead.
Hey, Robert, this is Don.
Hey, Don, how are you?
Doing good. Look, about the mask. If these masks were so effective, should they not be disposed of in a waste hazard bin someplace?
Well, if you look at some of the studies that have been done to analyze what's on these masks at the end of the day, then they should be considered bio-waste. They should go into the red bags with the biohazard symbol on them and be disposed of properly. I mean, we're talking about, near bloodborne pathogen level. And
so you're suggesting it's a mistake when I get rejected at Food Line to just grab a mask that I see lying on the ground and then use it?
I think so. In fact, there was a study recently done of children's masks coming out of these schools, and it is just absolutely shocking what they find on there. Them.
Yeah,
absolutely. And Don, give us a call next week. I'm sorry we're out of time tonight, buddy, but it's good to hear from you.
Same here, Rob.
All right, you take care.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we are out of time. The show has gone much too quickly.
As
always. Tune in next week, Saturday night, 6:30, for more America in Danger.